Hey guys, NoZoupForYou here. What is happening? It is a scorcher up here in the northeast. Temperatures verging on 100 degrees. Real feel over 100 degrees. If you're in the northeast, you are probably hot right now. And speaking of hot, I've got a ship to talk about today. A flamethrower, an HE spewer on the USN cruiser line. We're going to talk a little Seattle. We're going to even talk a little bit Cleveland and how they fit into the scheme of the light cruisers and what I think of them and what I think of the Seattle, primarily because that's what I'm grinding right now. No, I didn't just skip to the Wooster like so many people did, and I'm kind of wishing I might have, but you know what? I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to grind out the Seattle because I've grinded out every single ship line. No shortcuts to any single tier 10 I have, and I'm actually pretty proud of that. I'm very proud of that. So we're going to talk about some light cruisers, but first, I am back from Fort Dix and some duty up there. Had a week to assist with some training, and wow, what an interesting trip up there. I started off in my unit in Maryland. I drove up, and I decided to stop by the USS New Jersey on the way up. It's the second time I've seen the New Jersey. I absolutely love the Iowa-class battleships, and any chance that I get a chance to check out a battleship, I'm gonna do it because battleships are awesome. So toured the New Jersey. Wasn't quite hot that day. It was nice. The weather was nice. And after I toured the USS New Jersey, I'd never ever seen the USS Olympia, so I decided to go over to Philadelphia and take a look at that and the Bakuna, the submarine right next to it. So I'm over there on that side, taking photos right by the waterfront. Gorgeous ship, get a couple selfies, get up close to the railing, and I lost my phone. And when I'm saying I lost my phone, I didn't lose my phone. I tossed my phone into the river right next to the USS Olympia. Yeah, crazy. And I didn't just like fumble it and drop it. I basically flung it, and I have no clue how I did it. I mean, 9 times out of 10 when I drop something, I won't even think about it. You know, super cat-like reflexes, and I'll just grab whatever I drop, just without even thinking. But this time, no. Fumble, fling. And the sad thing about it is, over on the other side of the railing, you've got these planks, these wood planks that run the length of the river walk. And it almost landed on that, but there's a little gap in between the planks. And my phone just decided to swish right through that gap, that 1-inch gap. It didn't clatter on the wood, it just went straight through. And it's deep enough that I didn't even hear the plop when it hit the water. So, you know, obviously when you lose your phone, the first thing that for a split second, a nanosecond, goes through your mind is, oh, I can get it. So that wasn't really an option with this because it's in water, and I know the water there is deep. It's gone, completely gone. The second thing that goes through my mind is sheer panic. It's like, I don't even know how to get to Fort Dix at this point. Just lost my phone. I'm all of a sudden realizing how reliant we've become on our cell phones. Like, I don't know how to get out of here. I don't know how to get to Fort Dix. I don't know my way around anywhere. I'm 180 miles away from home. I am screwed. Fortunately, though, the girl at the kiosk to the USS Olympia helped me out. She let me call my wife first so I could tell her, hey, don't know when I'm going to talk to you again. I don't have a phone. And then she gave me some instructions to get to an AT&T dealership, which fortunately I started walking towards, and it's a good mile away, but I picked up a cab on the way there, which probably would have been better off walking because the cab, even with the windows down, had no air conditioning, and the thing was like 110 degrees in there. I'm like, oh, I'll just call Uber. Oh, wait, can't do that. So, yeah, it sucked. And I lost all my photos, save for one from the USS New Jersey. Undeterred, though, after the cloud uploaded all my contacts and everything else an hour later, and props to that AT&T store in Philly for helping me out. Went back to the Olympia, toured the Bakuna, and got on my way to New Jersey. Interesting day and a $500 mistake. Guys, if you're near a ship or on a ship, just don't lean over the railing with your phone. Don't do a me. Don't be stupid. Because it's an expensive mistake. Anyhow, an interesting trip on the ride up, but I did get to see some very cool ships. Again, USS New Jersey. And if you haven't seen the USS Olympia, you need to go out there and see it. But anyhow, we're moving on. Enough of the stories. Just thought I was going to talk about the Seattle and the Cleveland, and wow. I think I'm feeling a lot of what you all are feeling right now that are grinding either of these two ships. And that's a little bit of, I'm not liking it. Not liking it a lot. And I know a lot of you that I've run into in the game have pretty much said the same thing. You're not enjoying the Cleveland, and you're not enjoying the Seattle. It's not that either of them are bad ships. It's just that they're not the Helena or the Dallas or any of the other light cruisers. I would say out of the entire cruiser grind, those are the worst two ships to have to grind. Mainly the Cleveland, I really just don't think fits in at tier 8 right now. It's not a horrible ship, but it's not me. It's really not me. And I did not enjoy the grind. I pulled out some really good games with the Cleveland. I had some really good ones. But I could not win in it. I just could not win. And I don't like what you have to do in these cruisers. I'm not the type that likes to sit behind an island and just sling HE over the island for 15 minutes. That's not fun to me. And moving on from the Cleveland and going to the Seattle, it's the same thing all over again. I feel like I've got to find a good piece of terrain to get behind, not get spotted, and just sling HE, because if you start moving, and the thing's sluggish, the Seattle is sluggish. The Cleveland feels like it has a little get up and go, but the Seattle handles sluggishly. I feel like if you get caught out from behind terrain, you're just going to get rocked. And you are a light cruiser. You can't forget that. You're a light cruiser, so you're susceptible to damage. Not only that, your range is short. I mean, it doesn't have long-reaching guns, and neither does the Cleveland. The Cleveland's even worse. So right now, I'm not saying that I'm struggling in the Seattle. In the game you're watching right now, I did very good. I'm just not winning in it. I'm not winning in either. And I haven't even looked at my win-loss in those two ships, but I know it's sub 50%. I'd be lucky if it's 40%, which is unfortunate. They're not horrible ships, but it takes a certain type of gameplay, one with patience, and sometimes I just don't have patience when I'm playing cruisers. I don't want to have patience. I'm grinding the Charles Martel right now, and I'm loving that ship. Absolutely love it. At tier 8, that ship is phenomenal. You've got the Cleveland on one side of the spectrum, and then you've got the Charles Martel on the other. I can go into any round with the Charles Martel and feel like I can hold my own. Doesn't matter if I'm up against tier 10s. Just doesn't. Cleveland, though, when you wind up in a round with an abundance of tier 10s, it's like, gonna be one of those type of rounds. In Seattle, you know you're going up against tier 10s. But still, I don't feel safe in that ship continually. Charles Martel, I don't know, it just fits me. Fits my play style. If I'm in a cruiser, sometimes I just like to fly around the map using speed and maneuverability. And it's fun that way, and then setting people on fire. Can't do that in the Cleveland, can't do that in the Seattle. You've got to play very deliberately and very smartly. And the problem is, when you've got radar on your ship, you have this notion to cruise in close to a cap because you want to light those destroyers up. You want to help your team. And that's what they're there for. That's what you're supposed to do in them. But the closer you are to the enemy, the more likely you are to get lit up. So those two ships just aren't agreeing with me right now. And like I said, it's not that they're bad ships. It's just that it's a certain type of playstyle, and some players can do that. Some players are perfectly fine with sitting behind islands, slinging HE, and there you go. The problem with the Seattle is, I mean, we know that the Cleveland is a light cruiser. We've had it around for ages. I think part of it is, in my mind at least, because the Seattle looks like a beefy ship. It looks like a ship that can take a beating. It looks like a powerful ship. It looks kind of like a Baltimore. But it's not. It's not a heavy cruiser at all. It's a light cruiser. And if you don't have your captain set up, if you don't have verging on a 15 or 16 point captain, you're going to have a hard time with it too. So just a tip for you all out there right now that are getting close to Cleveland and Seattle. Take IFHE before you take concealment. Seriously, you know, your first instinct is to take concealment as soon as you can get it. You don't need to with these ships. They have decent concealability, actually. I think right off the top of my head, Seattle's down in the 10-kilometer range, and I don't have the concealment captain skill on it. I just have the module. So take IFHE because you are going to need it. Again, the guns are not as large as their heavy cruiser counterparts. They don't pack that punch that something like a Des Moines is going to do. So that's another thing to keep in mind right there. You need IFHE to do any serious damage, especially when you're using your HE, because your HE just isn't as strong as you want it to be, especially at tier 9. So really with these two ships, you know what the meta is. You know what you got to do with them. You got to hide behind terrain, you got to play smart, you got to play deliberately, and sometimes that's not really that fun. And I know some of us struggle with that. And it's funny because that's what I do in the Des Moines sometimes. Or for the most part, that's what I do in the Des Moines. I find a good piece of terrain to hide behind, sneak up to it, and start firing away at ships. But the Des Moines is just, I don't know, the Des Moines is the Des Moines, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that ship. That ship is the pinnacle of perfection. So, another little tip for you all out there, if you haven't done either of the USN cruiser lines, I would say go for the heavy line. Stick with the heavies. Wooster's a fun ship. It's a good ship, but it's really dependent on your team, as is the Seattle, as is the Cleveland. If you don't have a team that can back you up, if you don't have destroyers that are going to lay smoke for you, you're in trouble. You're not going to do well on these ships. And that brings up another very good point about the Seattle and the Cleveland right now. They're hurting because there are not a lot of destroyers playing in the game right now. I mean, they're out there, but when it used to be 5 destroyers every single round, we're looking at 2 or maybe 3. And that's because of the Cleveland and the Seattle. Let's face it right now, we're in a radar-heavy meta. And rather than a lot of players dealing with it, they're just walking away from destroyers. Personally, I'm not having an issue with it. I'm fine with it. I know as a destroyer player, I've got to hang back a little more. You can't go charging in. You know, I'm doing all the things you should be doing. I'm checking out the enemy roster. I'm seeing which ships have radar. I'm taking mental notes of what that range is, and I'm making sure to stay out of that range. You do that, you're going to be fine. But a lot of players don't want to do that. So they're just walking away from destroyers, and they're moving to cruisers and battleships instead. And when they do that, without those destroyers there, that takes away the concealment that you need as a Seattle and Cleveland. So without those there, it's making it pretty rough for the tier 8 and tier 9 light USN cruisers. Those are just kind of my overall thoughts on the Seattle and the Cleveland to a lesser extent right now. I mean, they're not bad ships. They're not bad ships. Yes, I wish their range was a little better. I think it's a little short. Yes, I wish their guns packed a little more punch, but they're light cruisers, so I get it. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, especially when you're using IFHE and you're lighting ships on fire. You can do perfectly fine. Yes, I wish the Seattle moved a little better, but it is what it is. Those are the ships at tier 8 and tier 9. You gotta grind past them to get to the Wooster, which again, I hope you all don't think she's some kind of wonder ship, because when you get to her, she has the same problems. Yes, she's got better range, but if you don't have a team to support you, you're not going to survive long in her. You really need to play these ships with a division, with 2 other players, or maybe even 1 other player that you really, really trust, maybe one of them in a destroyer that can give you that smoke continually for you to hide in. Because if you don't have that, if you're near a cap that's out in the open, and you get caught out in the open, you're going to be toast. And it's just not fun. You want to stay in the game, you want to survive, you want to use that radar to help your team. So just keep that in mind when you grind these ships. You know, if you got players that you play with, you're better off. But if you're playing solo, like I do a lot, it can be pretty rough. So just keep that in mind. Anyhow, guys, it's 4th of July week for us here in the United States of America. Hope you have a great time, especially if you're on vacation. For those of you elsewhere, our Canadian friends who celebrated Canada Day, hope you're enjoying your week as well. It's summer, it's hot, stay safe. Be good, people, be good. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I am out.